You're having a good time on the couch with your friends. You're having a good time in the bed alone. You're having a good time watching TV. Let us ruin your day. Yay!
Welcome to Now It's Ruined, the podcast for people who hate enjoying things, which has been going for a year now.
Woo-woo!
Crazy. I'm Kate Bridle.
And I'm Larkin Harrington, and I can't believe it either.
I know, it's nuts. We're both a little, because we're recording this right after the start of the war in Iran. Of us bombing Iran and bombing girls' schools with no congressional approval and, you know, spontaneously invalidating trans people's driver's licenses. And
what the fuck is that?
Yeah, the Handmaid's Tale times are
It is. And it
imminent.
feels like I'm a tween again. I'm like, wait, we're Benjamin Buttoning in a really, really nefarious way.
And I saw this morning that Pete Hegseth was like, oh, and we get to do this war without the stupid rules of engagement. He said that those are his words, not mine. Stupid rules of engagement, like the Geneva Convention, those dumb things that keep us from committing war crimes. I do feel like it might make more Trumpers question him, which I guess is good, but like at what fucking cost?
Right. In a similar vein, I've been seeing a lot of content about like people coming back to the side of the sane and being ostracized and rejected and like crying about it and making all these posts. Of, like,
literally what I was just going to talk about, actually.
Yeah. And you're like, no.
Yeah, an actually perfect transition into what I was going to say, because I wanted to clarify what we were saying on our Olympics episode, which was like, we need to let people, you know, adjust and learn. And
right.
But we weren't talking about like MAGA people who have been doing a shit ton of harm and been like blatantly racist for forever. Like, not that I'm saying that people can't come around and change heart, or those people can't, but like the people like you said that you're seeing. The video I saw was a black woman who was responding to one of those videos of a white woman crying and being like, they won't let me in or whatever. And even though I'm doing the work, and the black woman was like, if I burned your house down, would you like invite me over again? And even if I burned it down accidentally, like more than once, would you invite me to be your roommate? Like, like, no, sorry. And like in her caption, it was really brilliant because she was like, by the way, coming onto a platform, crying and centering yourself in your own feelings is not doing the work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that we weren't like, you've been supporting Nazis for 10 straight years? Come on down. It's great. Let's welcome, you know, like that you actually have to make them do the work and be real. We were talking more about people, I think, who have been like maybe well-intentioned but kind of blind due to their own privilege. And, you know, we've all had to have that kind of wake-up moment. That's who we mean. or people who are like already, you know, on the side, but they're maybe just using like a certain type of language that you feel the need to correct or whatever, like correct them gently. Just don't be dicks about it. And on a personal level, like individual level, if you've cut people out of your life, that is up to you. In your life, like
for your own safety and boundaries.
Anyway, it's been a year. We've grown so much. It's been really amazing to see. Thank you to all of you. My cat is excited about a bird outside, and now my desk is shaking.
I know. I was like, what's happening?
Anyway, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of you. And of course, thank you to all of our amazing guests we've had on. So Larkin, do you have like a favorite episode? Or like one you're particularly proud of?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I think I'm particularly proud of my Jim Thorpe episode. But my favorite to make was the cryptid episode.
So good. So much fun. I think if I was to choose one of yours, like one that I'm really proud of, it would be the Jim Thorpe one too for you. And my road signs episode, I was also
I was going to say the road signs episode for me.
You know what's funny is I think one of the ones that had the funniest moments, and one that I've been told repeatedly is people's favorite, even though we
Chainsaws
second guessed ourselves. No, Hello Kitty.
Really?
Yeah, lots of people have been like, that was my favorite episde.
That makes me so happy to hear.
I know. I can't believe I didn't tell you that already. I feel like a piece of shit, actually.
No, don't.
Yeah, like so we did all that second guessing of ourselves. Like, oh, did we not lean in enough? Did we not? And people have really loved that one. I do love the Chainsaws episode too, and I'm proud of how early that one was.
Yeah,
was like
the earlier episodes, I think I should look back on and just be like, oh, I'm proud. Like, I never was really like excited about my eyelash episode, but a customer came in recently and he's like, I just listened to that episode and oh my God. And it was like so cute. And I was like, oh man.
I love it. You know what one is undersung though? Emu Wars. That one, I loved that episode and I think it's fucking hilarious. And I learned so much.
Fun.
women are allowed to say nice things about ourselves, okay, guys? So I am proud of us. I'm proud of it. I think we make a good product. We've gotten amazing feedback, and I appreciate all of you. And I want to thank you in particular, of course, Larkin, for coming on this journey with me. And I know it was something we like just joked about doing for a while, but I always believed that it was something that like would be really cool and really special. I'd read some of your writing and I'd seen you act and stuff. And so like I'd heard you tell stories. So I knew that you were funny and like a good storyteller. But then you were on that podcast, your friend's podcast, where you told that story that you had written about Japan. You like read that story out. And when I heard it, I was like, we have to actually do this, because the way you wrote it and delivered it was so beautiful and like moving and amazing. And I was like, yes. So I want to thank you for lending your amazing talent that you constantly doubt. Like also your humor and your anger and your creativity and your humanity and your like endlessly empathetic, wonderful soul and socially conscious heart to this project. I just trust you so completely to like always deliver something amazing. And you always do. You always like give me some twist or like avenue that I would never have explored myself if I had done the episode, and I love it so much.
But and thank you, because this would not happen if Kate didn't do this. The reason we have a schedule, the reason it's edited, the reason it's recorded at all is because of her. I know she's looking at me with the face, but it's all her, you guys. I love the journey because I don't know what your episode is going to bring. And if we had both done the same episode, it would come out so differently.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. So thank you, Kate. You did this.
No, well, we did this, and I am just very proud to do this with you. And I also want to thank the Colin Hanks jar for being my constant companion during these recordings. And with that, I will give him a quarter.
With that, an offering to you, Colin.
Offering to Colin Hanks. Well, Colin Hanks, does he have powers to save us from whatever's happening? I'd really love that.
If you do, Colin, please let us know.
So with that, keep spreading the word, please. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Share your favorite episode with someone right now. Pick your favorite episode. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, our February bonus episode, by the time this comes out, will have been out for a couple of weeks. For $5 and up members, it's in honor of Larkin's birthday and focuses mainly on the police brutality case of Rodney King and the LA riots that followed. So go check that out. And additionally, all paid patrons will be getting access to a recording of Larkin and me playing the Newlywed Game with Erica Vogel hosting. And it was a lot of fun. So I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to be done editing that, but it will be out before the end of March for all paid patrons. And if you want access to that stuff, head on over to patreon.com/Now It's Ruined and check it out. Okay. As we have been promising since we started the podcast a year ago, I will be doing a deeper dive on hammocks today. On our mini episode about hammocks, Larkin did share a hilarious story of her sister being flung from one quite violently when they were children. And it's one of my favorite things. But that was a few years ago. So I wanted to check up on your relationship with hammocks and see if anything has evolved or if it's still contentious.
I'd say it's still very contentious.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I avoid them. I see them and go, no, not for me.
Have you been in one since we recorded the mini episode? What was that, 2021, 2020?
Holy cow.
It was a few years ago. I don't think I have been in one since we recorded it.
I don't even know. Like, I haven't really had the opportunity to encounter one.
The last time I had been in one when we recorded that was on my honeymoon, which was lovely. It was like on a beach. But I also have very good hammock memories from the farm, my grandparents' farm. There was a hammock between two trees, like big hammock. And, you just swing and you listen to the breeze and the lake and the loons and just read a book, or just chill, fall asleep. Lovely.
See, I'd want to fall asleep, but I feel like I would tumble on out.
Maybe you haven't had an experience with a big enough hammock. You need a big wide one where you just really, and you can't swing that
violently unless there's like a torrential storm.
Getting in and out of them is always a struggle.
It's not attractive or fun. I did see a little clip or image of like one of those ship cats that they had, like those naval cats to keep the rats away, and they had their own little titles and stuff, and the officers on that specific boat made like a tiny hammock for him.
Oh my God.
And like it's just a picture of this little tuxedo cat like snoozing in his hammock, his tiny little cat hammock. And I was like, That's nice.
That is so pure. Let me ruin that image with how those sailors came by the hammock.
Yeah, exactly.
And how hammocks came to be used in ships. So hammocks, yes, definitely have a reputation for relaxation, which is appropriate given their origins in the Caribbean. But you know you're not here for relaxation. You're listening to a podcast called Now It's Ruined, and we are here to bring down the vibes as ever because the people who invented hammocks and who gave us the word hammock from their native language were the Taino people. And the Taino were part of the larger group of the Arawak, the native inhabitants of South America and the Caribbean. And the thanks that these people received for the hammock and a bunch of other inventions was torture and genocide. The usual colonizer thanks to the native people. By the way, I pronounced the name of these people as Taino on our original mini episode, and then I heard elsewhere it was supposed to be Taino, and I was like, oh no, I said it wrong. But apparently Taino is like the American version, and Taino is like the Spanish and British version. So I guess it's either way. I'll try and be consistent, but I might wind up alternating. So we wanted to do a full version on this topic to really dive more into the Taino people, their culture, their history, also educate you and ourselves more on the things that happened to them. And I am going to start out with a major content warning because this is going to contain descriptions of very disturbing acts of violence, including against children and infants, also sexual assault, rape. It's not a fun one, guys. It's torture of the worst degree. So please be warned. I got a lot of information for this from a book that was written in the 1500s by Dominican friar Bartolomé de las Casas. And I want to read you the full title and alternate title for this book because it's so long-winded in 1500s. Larkin knows because she also has a copy.
She sent it to me and I opened it and was like, okay, this is going to be a fun romp of a read.
Thankfully, I'm pretty comfortable with like old-timey language, but even so, it takes you extra time. Okay, so the full title for this book is A Short Account of the Destruction of the Indies, which is the official title, and then the title page continues, Popery Truly Displayed in Its Bloody Colors, or A Faithful Narrative of the Horrid and Unexampled Massacres, Butcheries, and All Manner of Cruelties that Hell and Malice could invent, committed by the Popish Spanish party on the inhabitants of West India, together with the devastations of several kingdoms in America by fire and sword for the space of 42 years from the time of its first discovery by them.
And ending in them.
Mm-hmm. I do like popery truly displayed. Like,
yes, I know.
About Catholicism. Yeah. Popery.
Popery truly displayed.
So anyway, that's just the title. I read it so you don't have to. I read the first 30 pages more accurately, which were about the events that I am particularly covering. So as I said, Bartolomé de las Casas, the author of this work, he was an interesting figure. He didn't start out as a friar. He started out as a soldier. And in 1502, he traveled with the governor of the Indies to Hispaniola. He completed various expeditions. He was granted an encomienda as a reward. This meant he was given land, which included serfs who were Taino. And the Taino were not Christian, which simply would not do. Las Casas started evangelizing to them. And in either 1512 or 1513, he was ordained a priest, making him possibly the first person in America to receive holy orders. Now an official man of God, Las Casas went off to Cuba to participate in the bloody conquest of the native people there. Again, he was rewarded with an encomienda, so land and serfs. But despite having been a willing participant in these atrocities for a good decade or so, sometime in that next year, he had a change of heart. I don't think we know why. I don't think we know what prompted it. If it was that he was a priest and he felt kind of more of a calling toward God and was really questioning whether any of this was being super Christian.
Was super godly.
It's like, I've been reading a lot of the Bible and I don't know if we're on the right side of this.
Some things are not matching up.
So in 1514, he announced that he would be returning his serfs to the governor, not freeing them, mind you.
Returning them.
Give them back to the governor.
God.
Las Casas, he continues to hold some very problematic views.
Look. He's messy. He's not showing up perfectly.
No, he's not. The following year in 1515, he went back to Spain to plead for more lenient treatment of the indigenous people in the Spanish-occupied Caribbean, aka the West Indies. Las Casas found an influential ally in Francisco Jiménez de Cisneros, the Archbishop of Toledo. Cisneros helped Las Casas form a commission to investigate the treatment of the Taino and other native people. And over the next couple of years, Las Casas tried and failed to instigate meaningful change. He was trying to like start a little colony with like Spanish farmers and then native people, like, and they'll all live together and it'll be really nice and it'll be peaceful and we can live alongside each other and I'll prove it. But the farmers, like, not enough of them wanted to participate. They were like, I'm good. No, thank you. Indigenous people were like, why don't you actually go fuck yourself? So it didn't really work out.
It's a great thought.
Yeah. He like tried to start the colony and the indigenous people attacked it and were like, no.
Yeah. I mean, so even if he had this change of heart, whatever it may have been caused by, he's still like wildly out of touch. Just like,
yeah.
Let's just be happy together. And they're like, I will actually burn your whole plantation.
We have to reach across the aisle.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, go ahead. Reach across this aisle. Do not mind the machete that I'm holding over your outstretched arm.
Yeah. So Las Casas retreated into religious life, joining the Dominican order in 1523. And it was after this that he started writing the book, which wasn't published until after his death by his request. I have no idea why.
Interesting.
Maybe because he knew he was going to get a lot of backlash for calling
what
out.
A coward.
But he's already doing
Casas.
it. Like, well, he's calling out the Spanish government like to their face. So I don't know.
Sorry, I called you a coward. I mean, I have feelings about you anyways, but
It's not a pure work of like factual accounting. It's more of a warning about how Spain was going to be condemned by God for what they were doing to these people. But it does include descriptions of many of the atrocities. And he emphasizes that these are things he did see happen with his own eyes. He kept advocating against the enslavement of indigenous people and eventually also against the enslavement of Africans. He was, of course, ignored by the Spanish government, and he died in Madrid in 1566. I know that starting with that story of Las Casas is kind of getting ahead of myself, but I wanted to lay the groundwork for who he was so I could set up the rest of this story with a quote from his book about the Taino people that really displays his problematic, paternalistic view of them. He described the Taino and the other Arawak tribes as, quote, innocently simple, altogether void of and averse to all manner of craft, subtlety, and malice. This is a most tender and effeminate people, and so imbecile and unequal balanced temper that they are altogether incapable of hard labor. They're innocent little babies who don't know anything about working or war. Poor things, they're so frail and weak. He also describes them as sheep at one point, like, so condescending.
And I love the combination of imbecilic and feminine.
Yeah. But like, as you'll see, that is very much why he was like, you can't treat them like this because they're so weak.
They're so soft,
fragile
babies.
And the slaves we're getting from Africa are much hardier. So like they should be worked over here. You're like,
okay.
There's a lot wrong there. I understand that you're trying to do a good thing and that where it's coming from is maybe a good place, but like, good God, you got to reform some ways that you're thinking about this. White savior complex.
Out the wazoo.
Out the wazoo. Yes, because the Taino were anything but simple, and they were no strangers to violence, and they certainly were not incapable of hard labor because they were farming all the time. It was just that the labor they wound up subjected to would kill anyone in the conditions that they were put in. Before the Spanish came along to ruin everybody's fucking day, the Taino were the largest indigenous population in the Caribbean. As I said, they sprang from the Arawak tribes in the Orinoco Delta, who spread through Venezuela, exploring and occupying new lands along the way. In fact, if their technology had evolved the way that the European technology had, it might have been the Taino coming to conquer the Spanish instead of the other way around, because they were certainly spreading around, they were colonizing, they were getting into battles with other populations. They were defending themselves against populations like the Kalinago or Carib people who had taken over the Lesser Antilles. That includes like the Virgin Islands, Trinidad and Tobago. And then the Greater Antilles is where the Taino people were hanging out. And that's like the bigger islands that are a little further north. So Cuba, Hispaniola, Jamaica, Puerto Rico. I couldn't find that many details of like how much warfare they were into, but they were like conflicting tribes. You may be wondering about how the tribes traveled from mainland South America to the Caribbean islands, and the answer is that they were very skilled seafarers. So they built large ocean-going canoes that could carry over 100 people. Like hammock, the word canoe is a Taino word. Other Taino words include hurricane, barbecue, Cuba, and tobacco. So there you go.
I feel like I remember the barbecue one.
Yeah, barbecue surprised me.
Yeah.
And Cuba, that's kind of cool. It's like Cuba still has its native name.
At the very least.
Yeah. And Haiti sort of as well. Despite having no written language, the Taino had an organized system of government and a network of trade. And can you imagine how organized you have to be to have organized government and systems of trade between literally millions of people with no written language?
I actually can't.
No spreadsheets, no ledgers. They might have had like other ways of tracking things that weren't written language, like an abacus, is not written language, but you can do math on it. Like they might have had stuff like that.
Not tying systems.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So like, I'm sure they had systems like that.
Not nothing. Yeah.
But still, holy
insane.
Shit.
Yeah.
As I said, they were farmers. They grew crops like beans, maize, and yucca, which they learned to strain cyanide from.
Oh.
And for their staple crops, which were cassava and yams, they used shifting agriculture to get higher yields. And shifting agriculture is a way to preserve soil fertility. Larkin's like, yay, not a monoculture. I already see you nodding over there.
This is actually one of my favorite things, what you're talking about.
Yes.
Gets me hot.
So it really does. So shifting agriculture, you preserve soil fertility by totally clearing out the plot of land after you've used it, and then you let it recuperate, fully grow its natural vegetation back, and then you plant in it again. So it's a little different from crop rotation where you plant different crops each year. You actually just let this entire plot of land like rehab. The Vikings could have learned a thing or two about this in Iceland.
It really could have. What idiots.
Yeah. So as we said, though, to be fair to them, it worked where they came from. So they were just like, wait, what?
Sure, yeah.
And they did make adjustments. Anyway, so the Taino would clear plots by burning them selectively, and then they would pile the ashes into mounds of soil that were easy to plant in. They also made pepper gas for warfare. So yeah, they're not just like delicate little babies. They're making tear gas. And they developed tons of medicines. They were really very, very innovative in pharmacology and really skilled. And there are still Taino descendants who practice plant medicine, which is really cool. There was like a lecture that I found. I was just trying to find any more information about this. And there was like a lecture with 3 Taino plant medicine practitioners that happened a few years ago, but I couldn't find a recording of it. I was really sad. I was like, I want to watch this. They also played games with rubber balls, which blew the Europeans' fucking minds because they'd never seen rubber before.
That's right.
And in my December bonus episode, yes, I had mentioned this, and you asked more about it. So I have looked into it. Now I am the Taino sports correspondent. Because initially we had joked you were going to be the Taino sports correspondent, but then we didn't split this episode. So now here we go. Taino Sports Center. Da-na-na, da-na-na. The game that was played with the rubber ball was called Bate. The Jati Boniku Taino tribal nation of Boriken has a great page that describes a few traditional Taino sports. So this is from them. By the way, Boriken is the original Taino name for Puerto Rico. So Bate was a ceremonial game that was a predecessor to soccer, like really, really similar actually, or football, if I may.
Football.
Talking about this part of the world. So there was a rectangular plaza or like ball court that was usually pretty centrally located in a village or community. And 2 teams of 12 people of any gender, women played too, were on opposite sides and had to try to get the rubber ball into the opposing team's goal. And this ball, which was called a batu, was about the size of a soccer ball, and you couldn't touch it with your hands. So really, really very similar to soccer.
Yeah.
The main difference is that the ball is just like off the ground a lot more in Bate. Like soccer, they really are focused on just kicking it down. And in Bate, it's like you bounce it off your chest, your shoulders, your head, your arms, just not your hands. So you can use like your forearms and stuff, your knees. So it's just off the ground much more. It's very fun. I watched a video of some Taino descendants playing it, and it was really, really cool to watch.
I bet it's fast.
It is. They also would wear like ceremonial stone belts, and they would bounce the ball off of those as well. So that's Bate. The Bate Games were a hugely important way. It was kind of like the Olympics in Greece. It was like a way that these tribes came together, they bonded. So they would hold annual games, and they would gather, representatives of the families from all the surrounding islands and different tribes through the Greater Antilles. And then they would play this game as part of the ceremonies at this gathering. And they had an East team and a West team, and they would compete against each other. So it was like pretty much like modern sports. It was really cool.
Wow.
As far as other Taino sports, the men would also play something called makebare, where 2 men would face each other in the middle of a 9-foot circle and try to slap each other's calves. And whoever slaps the other one's calves 9 times wins. Or if you get pushed out of the circle, you lose. It's like such a dude game.
That I was going to say.
And it was like for warriors. I think it was like to, hone agility and speed and all of that stuff.
Probably something to do with like being able to protect your lower limbs, because if you get that, then
Oh yeah, there's also a game for kids that actually sounds really fun called Guamajico, and they have like tree seed pods on the end of strings, and they try and like smack each other's seed pods and break them in like on the ground in a circle, which sounds like fun. I want to play that. There you go. That's the end of my illustrious sports reporting career.
I enjoyed it.
On top of all these other Taino inventions, they also invented the hammock. On the mini episode, I said that hammocks were invented by the Mayans, but that actually doesn't seem to be true. And I'm sure we don't know for absolute sure. But to the best of our knowledge, the Taino invented the hammock on the island of Hispaniola, known today as Haiti and the Dominican Republic. As I kind of hinted at, Haiti is also a word of Taino origin, though not exactly. So they called the island Haiti. And Haiti means the land of high mountains. And that's what I'm going to call it moving forward. So after the Spanish encountered hammocks on Haiti, they were like, well, these are ours now. And they started using them in ships for their cats and for themselves so that they wouldn't roll out of bed. And they brought hammocks to other parts of Central and South America. And the Mayans picked them up from the Spanish, who had taken them from the Taínos. So
okay.
That's the way we think it went, at least. According to Las Casas, it was the more affluent or higher ranking members of the Taino who slept in hammocks. Other people slept in mats on the floor, which was riskier because there were like insects and snakes and stuff that could bite you if you were on the ground. And hammocks helped reduce that risk. Plus, they're super duper comfy. So because the hammock originated on Haiti, that is where I'm going to focus. Because I need to focus or I won't be able to get through this because there's so much. There are horror stories from all over this region, and I know we will talk about them in future episodes. So I'm going to keep myself to Haiti and a little bit about Cuba. The Taino population on Haiti was estimated to be around 3 million people, possibly more. They had leaders known as caciques or chieftains who ruled 5 different chiefdoms on Haiti. And the people within these chiefdoms would pay tributes to the chieftains, who I'm sure got the luxury of hammocks. Per Las Casas, the 5 chiefdoms on Haiti and their caciques were as followed. So Magua, led by Guarianex. Marian, led by Guacanagari. Macana, led by Caunabo. Zaraqua, led by Behechio and his sister, Anacauna. And Hike, led by another woman, Hikanama. I'm sure I'm butchering all of that. I'm so sorry to anyone who knows the real way to pronounce them. The Taino were what's known as a matrifocal society, where women aren't necessarily in charge, although sometimes they obviously were, but they were highly regarded and respected throughout society. And like bloodlines and inheritance were determined by the mother's side of the family. One of the most important Taino deities was the female spirit Atabe, from whose womb it is said the primal matter of all that exists emerged. So she's like the creator of the world.
I mean, nice.
Like I said, they were in conflict with the Caribs, which I tried to learn more about, but I just don't think we know that much. There was one mention of the Taino taking Carib women in raids, so they're snatching ladies. And we know they invented pepper gas for conflicts, as I said, so they were getting into some stuff, but it seems like for the most part, they are, as I described them in the mini episode, a pretty chill, agrarian, matrifocal society.
So not necessarily matriarchal, meaning like
women in charge,
right? Okay, just
matrifocal. So women are respected, but it's not. They're not in charge.
They're not leaders. Got it.
And except they can be, but like
they can be, but
not the
as
priority.
The general rule. Got it.
Okay. Right. So count on a bunch of patriarchal fuckwads to come along and destroy an entire population of people living in relative peace, from what we can tell. And these fuckwads were led by the colonizer who walked so other colonizers could run. Good old Christopher Columbus. Here he is. We don't know a lot about Columbus's early life. His name was actually Cristoforo Colombo. I don't know if he changed it or history did, but here we go. The English were like, we're not saying that.
We're not saying that.
It's too many O's. It's believed he was born in Genoa, Italy in 1451, the son of a wool worker and merchant. And he started his career at sea as a teenager in Portugal. 1476 was the first time he went on a voyage in the Atlantic Ocean specifically, which he would later become obsessed with crossing. And there's a little bit of Charles Lindbergh-esque determination here, because he almost died on his first Atlantic voyage when his fleet was attacked by French privateers, and like the ship was set on fire and he had to abandon it and swim to Lisbon or swim to the shore of Portugal. But he was like, no, this is what I want to do. Let's get back on that boat. Let's go.
Wow.
And I'm like, you're a crazy person.
Right. That didn't shake you? Okay.
So he wound up in Lisbon, where he set up a business with his brother Bartholomew, and they did like chart making and stuff, but Columbus was mostly going to sea and doing trade. He was buying sugar and whatnot. And he traveled to Iceland, Ireland, and Africa, and he started learning more about the wind currents on the Atlantic. And in 1479, he met and married Philippa Perestrello, and they had a son, Diego. Philippa died when Diego was still young. And after this, Columbus moved to Spain, and there he met Beatriz Enriquez de Arana, who he never married, but he did have another son with, Fernando.
Uh-oh.
So, out of wedlock. Before he had left for Spain, he had developed this aforementioned obsession with crossing the Atlantic. He'd heard stories of the islands around India and China that had a bunch of like gold and jewels and spices and all of this stuff. But it was difficult for Europeans to get there because they couldn't go east because the Muslims were dominating the trade routes through the Middle East at the time. And we'll dive more into that in another episode. But basically, they had monopolized trade in the area, dominating the network of Silk Roads, which were really mostly waterways that connected all these major trading ports in Asia. So European traders weren't going to have any luck trying to go that way and hit China and India by hitting east. So Columbus figured maybe we can just go the other way.
Let's go around.
He and other nautical experts did generally agree that the world was round and that there was an uninterrupted water route from Europe to Asia via the Atlantic Ocean. So they had no idea that North and South America were there. What Columbus and his contemporaries did not agree on, though, was how big the Earth actually is. So Columbus thought that the route via the Atlantic would be quicker because he estimated that the distance between the Canary Islands, which are just off the coast of Africa, the western coast, and Japan was only about 2,300 miles. Other experts were like, nah, bro, we're pretty sure it's like 12,200 miles, which is accurate, as it turns out. They were right. But Columbus was like, whatever, haters, I'm going to do it. And it's going to be so close. And you're all going to have to kiss my ass. Like, you're going to see. So he starts asking every different kingdom that he's affiliated with to fund this voyage. So he went to the king of Portugal first, and he was like, please, can I go across the Atlantic? And the king was like, no.
No.
So then he went to Genoa and was like, please, let me cross the Atlantic, give me money. And they were like, no. And then he went to Venice and he was like, pretty, please let me cross the Atlantic, give me money. And they were like, no. And finally he goes to Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain and it's like, pretty, please, with a cherry on top, let me cross the Atlantic. I only need 3 ships. I don't need any more than that. Like, please. It won't even be that much. And they were like, no. Because their experts were pretty sure it was way fucking further than he thought it was. And Ferdinand and Isabella were also focused on war with the Muslims at the time. So that was like their main priority. They were trying to take some land in the Middle East. But they kept Columbus on retainer. So they were like interested in him to some degree. And eventually the Spanish got the upper hand in their war against the Muslims and took over the last stronghold. And Columbus had continued to nag them about this journey with the help of Spain's treasurer and some Franciscan friars. And the friars were apparently interested in getting this project funded because they thought it was going to be very, very profitable. And they were anticipating the end of the world. And they wanted to install a Christian emperor in the Holy Land so that he could like fight the Antichrist.
Okay.
So they're like, okay, this journey will result in lots of jewels and stuff, which will help finance a crusade to install a Christian emperor in the Holy Land and fight the Antichrist. High stakes for them.
Super high stakes. And
real high.
Playing it really chill, though. They're like, no, I think that we could back this. This sounds... And meanwhile, they're just like, this is it.
I read that and I was like, whoa. No wonder they were helping him out. They're like, this is genuinely, we are saving humanity at the end of the world.
Columbus, you're up.
Get us all that sweet money that you know
all that
Christ
gold
is such a fan of.
Yeah, he loves gold. we know.
He famously loves markets.
Gold. Yeah, gold.
The rich
lording wealth over impoverished people. He's into it. It's in that book.
He threw a fit because there weren't enough sales going on.
Exactly. Profit margins were too low.
Yeah, he was like, the Dow is shit. I'm going to flip this table.
Where are my fishes at low?
You're not charging enough for sandals. Yeah. What are your overheads, not
really
using
like
enough
this
sweatshops.
Where are the children?
That's what Jesus was all about. And hating your neighbor. Finally, Ferdinand and Isabella were like, fine, Jesus, take some money and get the fuck out of our faces. No, actually, they were pretty enthusiastic about it because they were like, money, money, money. They promised Columbus that he could be the governor of whatever islands he found and that his son could succeed him as governor and so on and so forth forever in perpetuity. So he's like, fuck yeah, that's my legacy right there.
Damn.
And so in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, we've all heard it, with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And at this point, I have to say, this is the first time I've been a little disappointed in Britannica because they kind of suck Columbus's dick a little bit. They talk about his navigational genius for picking up trade winds near the Canary Islands. And I'm like, yeah, he learned that from other sailors who said that's what you should do.
Done that already.
And they also, I ran across a whole page that's kind of like, you know, he is blamed for a lot of stuff that he didn't anticipate. And he was like a man of his time. And I was like, Britannica.
Britannica?
And I'm like, sure, he was pursuing glory in the way that had been conditioned into him at the time. But like, I think the turnaround of Bartolomé de las Casas, for one thing, shows us that like not everyone is into the atrocities.
No. And you can look at it and go, mm-mm.
And there were people who were like, didn't approve of it from the start. Like,
right.
Were already anti-slavery, including Queen Isabella. She was pretty much anti-slavery. You could enslave the cannibals and
sure,
the people who didn't believe in God, but then otherwise don't enslave people. But like Columbus was extremely fine with many, many atrocities. And Britannica does also like acknowledge that. But the way they talk about him just kind of soft compared to the way I've seen them treat other people. And it's very surprising. I don't know what's going on there. But we still love you, Britannica. But
we do, but tisk tisk.
Don't be a Columbus apologizer. Mm-mm. So on October 12th of 1492, after just 36 days of sailing, they arrived in the Bahamas. And despite his navigational genius, Columbus was like, fuck yeah, I found the Indies. And like I said, I did it so fucking fast. I was so right. And he didn't spend much time in the Bahamas. He kind of like planted the flag for Spain and wrote about how nice the indigenous people were. And instead of being like, these people are being really kind to us, like it'll be nice to trade with them or whatever, he wrote, quote, they will give all that they do possess for anything that is given to them, exchanging things even for bits of broken crockery. They do not carry arms or know them. They should be good servants. End quote. So yeah, Columbus's first thought when he encounters a group of people who are treating him with kindness is that they should take advantage of them and trade and enslave them.
The worst.
But it's not his fault.
Anyway. No. He's just conditioned.
Innocent little baby lamb of his time. Anyone would have done the same.
Literally anyone of that time.
Literally any person
would have rolled up
that time
and said, dude, give them like broken shit and they give you stuff. We should come back here and force them into slavery.
Exactly. So then he was like, I want to find Japan though. And I don't know what made him determine this island was not Japan. Maybe it was like the size of it. He could tell that it was too small because like people had been there, you know, so they were like,
from the
they have
direction
reports
that they knew. Sure.
Right. And so he left the Bahamas. He landed in Cuba on October 28th. And he initially thought that was Japan. But then he was like, no, actually, you know what? This must be mainland China. So now I'm going to go off and go to the south to try and find this fabled Chinese city that was like, of course, full of gold, blah, blah, blah. And while trying to find this city, he got blown off course and the Santa Maria was shipwrecked off the coast of Haiti. And Columbus still had the 2 other ships, so he and his men got on those and he landed on Haiti. And then he was like, oh, this is definitely Japan, or at least one of the legendary islands that King Solomon got rich off of, obviously. Like 100% positive he's right. He's in Asia, like despite not seeing any evidence of the cities that people have talked about or like the type of people who are normally there, like nothing. Anyway.
The hubris. I hate you. I hate you.
I hate you. Punch you so hard in the Denny's parking lot. Columbus took greater interest in establishing a settlement on Haiti than he had in the Bahamas. And this might be because he met with Guacanagari, the cacique of Marion. And he noticed that some of the people in his chiefdom were wearing gold. And he asked about this. And Guacanagari was like, oh, totally, dude. Like, if you want more gold that's in that area over there, like, go nuts. Because gold wasn't particularly special to the Taino people. They were just like, it's nice. And they, like, used it in some jewelry and stuff. But they valued other things like turquoise more. So
Yeah.
they gave him like a mask inlaid with gold, and he was like, oh my God, this shipwreck, exactly right. This shipwreck was God sending me here. This island will give me all of the wealth that I've made this journey for. So Columbus built a stockade on the island, partially using wood from the Santa Maria wreck. And Columbus was very excited to report back about his success to Spain. And so he left 39 guys on Haiti and headed back to tell Ferdinand and Isabella the good news that he found an island full of gold and, of course, potential slaves. At this point, most enslaved people were being used as domestic servants, not so much for like farming and things. That happened more after slavery did come to the Americas. The Spanish were already using slave labor in sugar plantations on the Canary Islands, though, so they do seem to have started this trend of using African people specifically as slave labor on farms and plantations. But the Portuguese were the ones who first enslaved Africans and established the first slave market in 1444. And on this trip back, it said in some places that Columbus did bring some Taino people as captives, and then other places I read that he did that later, so I'm not entirely sure. But this may have been the first like transport of slaves across the Atlantic. If not, it's a later journey that he takes that is confirmed. Columbus's journey back to Spain sucked. He encountered shitty weather. He wound up having to detour to Lisbon, where he met with the Portuguese king. And this started a suspicion in Spain that Columbus was maybe not faithful to the Spanish government. But he still went back to Spain. He gave an enthusiastic report of everything that he had found, as well as a display of gold and parrots and maybe some people that he had kidnapped. The Spanish monarchs were amped to have him go back and get more stuff and people from the island. Columbus headed back to Haiti to find that his stockade had been destroyed and all the sailors had been killed by the Taino. Probably because the sailors were doing many unsavory things to the Taino, such as looting and kidnapping and raping, and the Taino were realizing these guys are fucking assholes. There are only 39 of them.
Right. That's more of the hubris right there. Like, there's enough of us. We can torment and abuse these people, and they're like, we've got hundreds. What are they going to do?
They're so nice.
They're so nice.
Also, according to Las Casas, the Spanish were eating a shit ton of food, like so much more than Taino people normally eat. And so they were like eating the Taino out of house and home. I know I'm being inconsistent about the pronunciation. Sorry, everybody. Columbus comes back. He finds this has happened and he retaliated with violence. He established harsh policies against the Taino, which may have included the tribute system that I mentioned in the mini episode where he demanded a certain allotment of gold or their hands would be cut off. But there's some dispute about whether or not that was actually true. But he definitely demanded gold. And I'm sure that there were harsh consequences if you did not bring him enough. We just don't know if the hand chopping in particular was a part of that. There was also, though, definitely hand chopping. So we just don't know if those two things were tied together. In any case, this is when he started making a concerted effort to fully conquer the Taino on Haiti, and he forced the Taino to rebuild the settlement and to mine for gold. The process of gold mining was extremely difficult, and many Taino people died in the mines. And I tried to find more details on what that process was in these days, and I really just struggled. I couldn't find anything, but it was backbreaking, I'm sure, really hot because you're in the Caribbean and you're in tunnels and in these deep mines that are, I'm sure,
not ventilated,
stifling.
But wasn't there not really that much gold at all?
No, there was actually gold there, yeah. I think I made the mistake of thinking there wasn't that much gold there. And I think there were other islands where it wasn't. But there was actually a decent amount of gold on Haiti. Despite Britannica saying that Columbus wasn't responsible for all this stuff that's attributed to him, he is the one who, as I mentioned, completed what is very possibly the first transatlantic slave trade in either 1495 or 96. He kidnapped 500 Taino people and sent them to Europe. He might have also taken some with him on that first journey, but the first transatlantic slave trade was actually west to east. And yeah, it was Columbus either way. He started the transatlantic slave trade. In 1501, Isabella actually prohibited the transportation of outside slaves to work on plantations and mines in the West Indies, but the Spanish government did allow a few people to take their privately owned house servants to the New World. And in 1501 or 1502, one of Columbus's buddies, Juan de Cordoba, brought an enslaved African servant to Hispaniola, and this is the first known transportation of an enslaved African to the Americas. And it was all downhill from there, my friends. Because the Taino people were dying en masse, creating a demand for more slaves, the slave trade really ramped up over the next few years. The Spanish were like, well, these people are weak. They keep dying of like starvation and overwork and are totally normal diseases, like a bunch of wusses. Like, what's up with them? They can't handle anything. The Taino didn't have the resistances to these weird European diseases because they were on a completely different fucking continent. So they didn't have like smallpox. Enslaved Africans, on the other hand, did have resistance because they were in more of the same area of the world and had a lot of the same diseases. So they were more resistant to European diseases. And so they were perceived as hardier and better for this kind of work. So in 1509, Columbus's son Diego, who was now the governor of the Indies as per the prior deal, wrote to King Ferdinand to complain about the fragility of the Taino slaves and ask for more slaves from Africa. As I said, Las Casas kind of initially supported this because he thought that
he was worried about his softer babies. Yeah,
exactly. But eventually his understanding did grow and he also opposed the enslavement of Africans. In 1510, Ferdinand approved the shipment of 250 enslaved people, mostly Africans, to be transported to Haiti. And from this point on, enslaved Africans were regularly transported to the New World. Between 1501 and 1873, some 10 to 15 million enslaved Africans were brought to the New World, and those are the people who survived. It is estimated that upwards of 45 million Africans died as a result of the slave trade.
My brain can't even comprehend that number.
And I talked way more about this on the December bonus episode, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again on probably more than one occasion. So I don't mean to gloss over it here, but I do want to get back to the Taino and focus on them. But I did want to mention all of that because it's very important, and Columbus fucking started it. So in addition to being worked to death in the mines and dying of diseases, the Spanish carried out many, many horrific atrocities against the Taino. They forced them to stop farming their essential crops in favor of making them mine for gold. So they caused a lot of starvation. Columbus's brother Bartholomew, who he had left in charge on Haiti along with his other brother, had made tensions worse, not only with the Taino, but with the Spaniards who were living there. He basically implemented a class system and favored some Spanish people over others. And so the unfavored Spaniards were pissed and were complaining back to Spain about how the Columbus family was ruining fucking everything. And in 1500, the Spanish Chief Justice sailed to Haiti and arrested Christopher Columbus and his two brothers, sending them back to Spain.
I didn't know that.
For how they were running things for the Spanish, of course, not for the violent atrocities committed against the Taino. But this didn't stop the Taino from being completely destroyed by the Spanish. So here's where we're going to get pretty graphic. I'm not entirely certain of the timeline of all these things because Las Casas doesn't give years in the book. But these are some of the things that he says happened to the Taino as the Spanish spread across the island of Haiti and then into Cuba. The Spanish separated the men and the women, making men work in the gold mines and the women farm, laying manure down in the fields. Some of the men were also farming. They were not allowed to interact with each other, so they didn't have babies. But the Spanish sure did have babies with the Taino women. By 1514, just about 20 years after their first contact, 40% of Spaniards had Taino wives. That's according to an official survey, so the actual number is probably a lot higher. And obviously, I'm sure these marriages were, for the most part, if not 100% forced. The Spanish also fed women nothing but vegetation, which caused those who already had babies and were nursing not to be able to produce milk, so their babies starved and died. A Taino rebellion happened when a Spanish captain, quote unquote, abused the consort of Cacique Guaranex, the leader of Magua. Las Casas said that this was kind of the last straw for this cacique who had been helping the Spanish, as most of them were, and he had been putting up with a lot of bullshit. And then one of these Spaniards, I assume, raped his wife or his lover, and so he rose up against them. The Spanish ripped through the rebelling Taino, vowing that 100 Taino should die for every Spaniard killed. No one was spared, including pregnant women, who the Spanish would slice open and tear apart alive. They would also tear already born babies from their mothers and throw them against the rocks. They threw children into rivers and then taunted them by being like, come here, come to us. They made bets about who could cut someone in half in one blow or behead someone the most cleanly or get their sword the furthest through someone's torso in one shot. They built structures called gibbets from which they would hang 13 people, apparently to represent Christ and the 12 apostles. So Christian of you.
Oh, I'm sure Jesus would love that.
They would hang them from these gibbets and then burn them from underneath.
Jesus Christ.
They would also build grills propped up on sticks so that they could lie people on them, light fires underneath them, and slowly roast them to death.
And this is where I take issue with people trying to argue that there isn't inherent evil.
I mean, I don't think it's inherent. I think they were definitely taught it by...
Oh, wait, right. But,
you know,
those are evil acts.
Yes, they are. And I know I say I don't believe in evil, but I don't believe a lot of the people we brand evil are evil. I think they're human, but I think there is evil exists.
Right.
Apparently, one of the captains was annoyed by the screams of the people who were being roasted to death, and he commanded that they be strangled. But the executioner was like, no, I'm not going to do that, and just put gags in their mouths instead to stifle their screams. And again, Las Casas emphasizes that like he saw this with his own eyes. They also bred dogs to hunt and eat the Taino. Some people they left alive, cutting their hands off, not even all the way, just so they were like kind of hanging off their wrists.
Oh my God.
And they would send them back to the other people who were hiding in the mountains to let them know, like, this is what's going to happen to you if you keep rebelling. That's what happens when you dehumanize people.
I can't even imagine, though, doing that to an animal, let alone doing it to a human being. That's what I mean by evil. I'm just like, I know that it's conditioning, and I know that it's training, and I know that it's upbringing, and I know that it's societal norms at a specific time. But just like you said, there were people also seeing that, like Las Casas, and going, what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck is that? So the fact that these human beings, and I know that we have experiments that show that people even do this now today, and I don't understand the full psychology of it, but it's like, how is that? And that's why where I see the evil, I'm like, how can you not turn away from that?
I really understand, though, and I wonder if you'll relate to this. Like, I understand the point of that switch. Like, I experienced it a lot more when I was like younger and I was trying to be confident, and I would like use my acting skills to be like, well, you're this person in this scenario. And that switch where you just give yourself permission to do something that you don't think you're too embarrassed, or like you don't think you're going to be able to do. And then once you start doing it, you're like, oh, I'll do this all the fucking time. Like,
oh, yeah.
You know, like, you're like, oh, I would never like flip someone off when I'm driving. I don't know, whatever it is.
Right.
And then one day you just go, you know what? I'm going to be that person that asserts myself, and I'm going to do it. If someone is an asshole to me today, I'm going to flip them off. And then you do, and then you just start flipping everybody off. Like, I see where that threshold is, and I've like crossed it for myself a few times. And I can see how people incrementally give themselves permission for more and more. And then like once you do it, you're like, well, I'm this person now. And you just like assume the role of a person who's like fine with that. I don't know. It's scary.
It's really scary. And that they so often as humans were able to turn that off and go, well, that's not a being even. That's not even a dog to me. Can't hear the screams as human. Can't hear like children crying as human. And that terrifies me. Because the rage I feel hearing you tell me all of that, like in my mind, I was like, I would kill that person. I would take the person that was on the roasting spit and throw them on the roasting spit. And that's just as like interesting. Like I have enough anger that I'm like, they would deserve that. And they're not human. So that's really like,
you're coming right back around to it. Yep,
coming right back around to it. But like my brain does this own calculation where it's like, but I'm better because there's no fucking way that I would do that, A, without provocation, or B, to a child.
And these people are thinking, well, but I'm better because I'm of God.
Right.
I am a Christian, and I am like a human.
Learned and educated. And I wear pants. It's like,
so I'm better. Yeah.
I'm better.
But there is the thing of being like, I feel like I'm better for better reasons, though. Like,
yeah. I'm better because I would never do that. And you now, as a horrible, hateful creature, and now I'm dehumanizing you. Oh, God.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So Guardianex, who is the one whose consort was abused, was captured and shipped off to be imprisoned in Castile, but the ship sank and he died along with a bunch of other folks on board. A giant gold ingot that was apparently like the size of a loaf of bread was also lost. And about this, Las Casas says, thus it pleased God to revenge their enormous impieties, which I do kind of like.
I like that, Las Casas.
Marian, the area on Haiti that was led by Guacanagari, had tons of gold mines. And so he, of course, was forced to flee because of all the horrors that were happening to his people. And he died in the mountains. And all of his people died under Spanish rule. Macana, the area led by Caunabo, apparently made the best sugar. And Caunabo was also captured and drowned during a storm while being transported to prison. He was in chains, so obviously he sank when the ship was sinking. And when his brothers heard about this, they tried to avenge him, but the Spanish wound up wiping out half the population of Macana in response. Behechio and his sister Anacauna, the leaders of Zaraqua, were very helpful to the Spanish, but when Behechio died, she was in charge, the sister, and the governor of Hispaniola rode against her. And he rounded up a bunch of her people and burned them to death in a barn. Others were run through with lances, and Anacauna was hung from one of the gibbets to burn to death. If any of the Spaniards decided to be human beings and try and save any of the people and put them on horses and get them to run away, another Spanish soldier would come up and stab the person off the horse with a lance and then cut their legs off when they were on the ground. Anyone who survived this massacre was sent into slavery. Hikanama, the female ruler of Hike, was crucified, and her people were also murdered and enslaved. So that's Haiti. The native population in Cuba had heard about the Spanish bullshit before the Spanish started colonizing there in earnest. The Taino cacique Hatui had fled from Hispaniola with 400 men to warn the Taino on Cuba about what was happening. And so he was like, the Spanish worship gold. They will commit atrocities to get it. Like, that is their god. And so when the Spanish landed in Cuba, it was already hostile. Las Casas was one of the Spaniards who went to conquer Cuba. So all of this, again, is his firsthand account of what he saw there. Hatui was captured and burned alive on February 2nd, 1512. While he was tied to the stake, of course, they had to try and get him to believe in God and save his soul or whatever, so he'd go to heaven. And they rambled at him about all of this shit, about, like, heaven and blah, blah, blah.
While he's
and burning? At the end of it, no, just while he was tied to the stake. And they ramble at him about heaven and all of this stuff. And then there was a pause, and apparently he was like, do the Spanish go to heaven? And, of course, the priest was like, well, anyone who's good and godly can go to heaven. And Hatui was like, then I'd rather go to hell. New history crush, quite frankly.
Quite frankly. Anywhere away from you.
You can get in. It can't be that great of a place, quite frankly.
Okay.
Las Casas said that he convinced a bunch of the leaders of the Taino in Cuba to meet with him and the Spanish, promising that they would be safe. He was promised by the other people in the party, the other captains, that they would be safe. But when 22 of the leaders agreed and showed up, the captain that was there with Las Casas ordered them to be burned. And Las Casas says, with great difficulty and much ado, I snatched them out of the fire, which I think means he convinced the captain not to do it and not he was literally like grabbing people out of the fire. But he claims that he saved these people. Many Taino and other native people in this in the area all around in the Caribbean took their own lives in order to avoid the cruelty of the Spanish because they saw all these other really horrific things happening. And they were like, well, I would rather hang myself than be roasted alive. So there was another guy, one of the Spaniards, who had been given like hundreds of Taino serfs and slaves at a time, and he just kept working them to death at like a super rapid rate, and they just kept giving him more. Per Las Casas, more than 6,000 children were murdered in Cuba in just 3 or 4 months because they lost their parents, is how he put it. So I don't know if they died of starvation or neglect or whatever because their parents were gone, or if they were straight up murdered. Probably a mix of both, if I had to guess.
Monsters. I can't. Not human. Sorry.
But they are, though, because that's your way of rejecting the things in you that recognize the things that you can see in them and distancing yourself from them, which doesn't solve the problem. Because those men were not born monsters.
Although some are.
Maybe. I don't know if I believe that.
I mean, I'm not saying some of them. I'm saying human. There's been some humans who are born that.
I'm skeptical of that because I'm just like, I need to see the actual like receipts of how you grew up. I don't know about that.
Right. But all these are fancy people with
No, not all of them. They're soldiers. Usually like merchant backgrounds, poor backgrounds. They could be just like now. Armies are not made up of the rich.
No.
As far as Haiti, Las Casas estimated that of the estimated 3 million inhabitants who were there originally, only 300 eventually remained. The Taino people were eventually like nearly entirely wiped out. I will say it sounds like the Taino and other indigenous people got back at some of the Spanish colonizers. The preamble to Las Casas' book mentions molten gold being poured down the throat of some colonizers by indigenous people. And I did find there is one instance of this having happened in Ecuador. So very possible that that was happening. And that was also a Spanish Inquisition move. They would do that to people, pour molten metals down their throats. So maybe they learned it from the Spanish and flipped it around on them.
Sure hope so. And that's my darker angels. But I hope at least a few Taino got to pour molten gold down colonizers' throats.
I mean, like I said, but like if the Taino had evolved differently, it might have been them we were doing an expose, episode on right now.
Who's to say? Although I just have this kind of feeling that unless they developed like a monarchy or some sort of that's identical kind of like serf class system, it's hard for me to remove this like idea that because they were mostly agrarian and egalitarian, and even though they had conflicts with other indigenous people,
they do default to like welcoming and niceness.
Right. And it's like, even if they go to explore and show up, I don't have this belief that they would show up and go, ooh, these would make good workers or slaves, instead of, I wonder what we can trade. I wonder what we can learn.
But like the Spanish and all of us started where they were, they just got past it on a different timeline. I mean, they already have a class system. I don't see anything preventing them from continuing,
Right.
Because the agrarian revolution is what caused capitalism, like the farming and being stable and staying in one spot. They were establishing and settling and making cities. And that's how all this bullshit happens.
But that can't just be the natural fate of humanity for that is what we evolve into. That can't be true.
It's funny because I feel like we're both such cynics in different ways about humanity.
Yeah.
So I don't think capitalism is inevitable, and I don't think it's the only system. Obviously, it's not. I just think that most of humanity has tended to kind of like lilt in that direction in one way or another. We have a pull to it, even in societies that didn't do it in the same way as Europeans.
Power of any kind, which is power of accumulated goods and wealth and people. And is that just like an innate human instinct? And if that's the case, then do we even deserve to be here? I don't think so.
I think we've had this discussion before. I don't think we've ever argued that we deserve to be.
Well, we don't have much longer.
No, it's true.
It's almost over, you guys.
We got to start funding a trip to install someone to defeat the Antichrist. Let's go.
That should be the next mission.
Maybe the Antichrist is the answer right now. Maybe it would bring us together.
We've misunderstood.
So many people
would
be like, it's just special effects. It's AI.
Exactly.
No one would be like, can you imagine what the Antichrist would have to do to prove he was the fucking Antichrist these days? Oh my God. People would be like, you did that with a filter on TikTok.
Yeah, you're right. Whatever the Antichrist is would just be like, I'm on fire.
I made it rain frogs. I'd be like, weather's fucked up. I don't know if you know that, but
it's global warming right now. Anymore. So that's the story, is that Antichrist shows up and it's like, yikes. Okay, they don't need me.
Yeah, he's come to Earth to destroy it, and then he doesn't have anything to do, but he's stuck on Earth, so he just has to hang out. And Satan keeps being like, son, you got to get out there and ruin the world. And him being like, dude, by doing what, Dad? Doing what? I'm just going to smoke weed and play Call of Duty.
There's nothing for me to ruin. I could not.
Christ can't possibly save them at this point. There's no one for me to fight.
Where is he, by the way?
Or they become roommates. They're just like, the Antichrist has to be the neat one.
No,
the
absolutely.
Antichrist is definitely the fastidious one. Mm-hmm. And Jesus is always
100%.
Like, kicking off his sandals and putting his feet on the couch. Like, dude, you spent 40 days in the desert. You can't just like walk back in and not shower and just like sit on the stuff.
Sit
like it's
on the sofa. And I've asked you to stop whittling in here.
Right. And also you keep throwing parties for like you're inviting like 12 guys over at the same time without warning me. And like, I need to sleep.
It's a lot to ask. Banquets.
This is an amazing idea.
We should workshop this
immediately.
Let's workshop this a little more.
It'd be a cute cartoon. So Columbus insisted until his death that he had landed in Asia despite mounting evidence to the contrary. He was like, I did it. And I did it so fast. It was so short. I was the one who was right. And like, so you didn't find Asia. You discovered an entire new set of continents.
Right. Can you just accept that? The ego and the hubris are too large.
I cannot admit that I was wrong in any way.
And me and my brothers were arrested?
They got let go. Like, eventually they were just like, you didn't run things well. Poo-poo on you, and you don't get to do it anymore.
Finger wag, smack on the bottom. Get out of here.
Yep, but his son was still very, like, prominent in court and stuff. And yeah, based on Columbus's writings, he kind of kept getting, like, nuttier and nuttier. He was, like, very certain that he was divinely ordained to do all of these things, and he wanted to keep sailing because he's, like, on this mission from God. He started calling himself Christ-bearer in letters. Again, don't give yourself a nickname.
Don't do that. Let it be bequeathed upon you, you creep.
And he started using like this weird, they described it as like a mystical signature. He's losing his...
Okay. You're not Prince.
Yeah, exactly. He's symbol, the Prince symbol. I wish that's what it was. But like he literally thinks he's God's gift to the world. And he kept sailing around, but the Spanish rulers were starting to be like, this guy's out of his fucking gourd. And
just avoid him.
Yeah, they're like losing faith in him and his ability to do anything else. They're like, it's kind of okay, bud. Like, you did enough. Just settle down. And he was like, no, I'm going to keep sailing around. I'm the Christ bearer. And he made some more journeys around Panama and stuff, but he missed his opportunity to hit Florida. He never encountered the Incans or the Mayans. He missed a lot of shit. He wound up shipwrecked again.
Oh, thank God. Did they leave him?
No. Well, for a while, actually. So... He and his crew were back on, I can't even remember which island. And people were like, hey, we got all these shipwrecked Spaniards over here. Come and get them. Columbus is here. And they were like, yeah, we'll get him in a minute. They did leave him.
Yeah, well.
For quite a while, actually. Eventually, he did make it back to Spain. He found that Isabella was dying, and she was his main supporter. So that wasn't very great news for him. And it is often said that he died in poverty, but per Britannica, that's not quite true. He lived in style, actually, because Diego, as I said, was still high up at court. But that wasn't enough for Columbus. So I think people get the impression he died in poverty because he was always complaining as though he was in poverty and asking the king for more money. Ferdinand was like, fuck off. Yeah, money, please. I've done nothing wrong in my life ever. He died May 20th of 1506, probably of severe arthritis and infection, which is... Ugh.
I hope he died in pain.
Die of arthritis?
I did not know
That's terrifying.
It's great for me.
You're glad he died of it.
Right. I'm filled with a happiness and joy.
He was bitter about his, obscurity and perceived lack of wealth to the very end. And I want to end this episode by reciting the poem I referenced earlier that I'm sure many of us heard as school children to help us remember when Columbus sailed and stuff. And it's a poem that really idealizes Columbus. But there's so much more to it than I ever remember hearing. So here's the whole thing. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He had 3 ships and left from Spain. He sailed through sunshine, wind, and rain. He sailed by night, he sailed by day. He used the stars to find his way. A compass also helped him know how to find which way to go. 90 sailors were on board. Some men worked while others snored. Then the workers went to sleep and others watched the ocean deep. Day after day they looked for land. They dreamed of trees and rocks and sand. October 12th, their dream came true. You never saw a happier crew. Indians, Indians, Columbus cried. His heart was filled with joyful pride. But India, the land, was not. It was the Bahamas, and it was hot. The Arawaka natives were very nice. They gave the soldiers food and spice. Columbus sailed on to find some gold to bring back home as he'd been told. He made the trip again and again, trading gold to bring to Spain. The first American? No, not quite. But Columbus was brave, and he was bright. I was surprised when I read that because they actually call out his mistake about India and then also mention the Arawak people by name. I was like,
by
what?
Name? That startled me.
But of course they do gloss over the fact that during those trips again and again, he was transporting people for slavery.
Oh, don't bother the kids with that.
Committing genocide.
If we teach children history, then they'll grow up to despise us.
They'll want things to change, and things are really working for us in our positions of power. So there's a lot in there that I didn't think was accurate, so I rewrote it.
Oh, yes.
This isn't a great masterwork of poetry, by the way.
I don't
rewrote
give a
it
shit.
5 minutes. Okay. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He had 3 ships and left from Spain to feed his ego and cause great pain. He thought he knew which way to go, but he's a dumbass, don't you know? October 12th, he spotted land and met the Taino on the sand. They greeted him with smiles and waves. These folks, he thought, will make great slaves. Bring gold and jewels were his demands, and if you don't, you'll lose your hands. The Taino worked and bled and died, and all the while Columbus lied, saying he was brave and bright, when on the world he was a blight. He'd found the Indies, he was sure, but in the end he died obscure. Brave and bright, old Chris was not. We'll see him in the parking lot.
Girl, what are you talking about? That wasn't a masterpiece. Holy shit. Snaps. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. You should be very, very proud of that.
Thank you. But I don't want to end with Columbus. I want to end with the Taino. So just one more thing. There are some very cool Taino culture groups like the one I mentioned in Puerto Rico. I highly recommend looking them up, watching videos, learn more about them from their descendants. Go pay attention to the Taino culture and learn more about it. Links in the show notes.
Excellent. And fuck Columbus.
Yeah.
The hammock is one of the very least of the things that was taken from the Taino, but it's something that, tangible we can look at. But maybe just to look at it as a symbol of like, don't let that happen anymore, even though it's probably gonna, but I'm not gonna cry about it.
So think about it next time you're in a hammock and you need to relax. Just think about genocide.
Yeah.
No, think about the cool Taino people who invented it. And
how there are people who, like you, listener, dear reader, who would stop somebody from being thrown into a fire or getting chopped in half. And we are there with you. And there are many, many others who also wouldn't let that happen. And we'll all one day relax in hammocks and take turns beating people up in a Denny's parking lot.
Hell has hammocks. For sure.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yes. And we are seeing so many of those people right now. We are seeing many, many wonderful people who are standing in the way of evil.
That was a lot worse than I remembered or thought. Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy 1 year anniversary.
Yeah. It's truly on point. It's truly miserable. You made me really mad.
Good. That's the goal as ever. Sad and mad. That's how we want to leave ourselves and all of you.
Thank you for a truly awful time. And you're welcome, everybody else.
And we will see you. Oh, next episode will be an upcycle, the episode about the origin of the boycott, which is very relevant and also really interesting and will be appropriate because it'll be around St. Patrick's Day and it's about the Irish. And I really had fun with that episode and I learned a ton. So hopefully you enjoy it. Guys. Yeah, I just needed to alleviate a little pressure off myself because it's been a lot this last month and I'm traveling and all sorts of stuff. But then we will be back with more regular episodes right after that. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. We love you. Go lie in a hammock, I guess.
Sure.